Thank you so much for being here this evening for what is sure to be an interesting and insightful conversation with three incredibly talented artists talking about the brand new art exhibition, Midsummer Romance, which is going to open tomorrow at the Silk Purse Arts Center. Before we get to meet everyone, my name is Stephen Snyder. I'm the Gallery and Communications Manager for the West Vancouver Community Arts Council, and we operate the Silk Purse Arts Center and put up all the incredible shows like the one you can see a little bit of behind me and our other arts programming. And we are thrilled to be able to present this exhibit with these incredible artists. I'd just like for us to take a moment to recognize that the lands on which we gather for cultural activities here in what is now known as West Vancouver are the unceded and traditional territories of the Squamish Nation. And it is such a privilege to be able to be on such beautiful lands that our host nations have stewarded since time immemorial. And it's a real pleasure to be able to celebrate all kinds of arts and culture, with and alongside them and the rest of our community. So Midsummer Romance opens tomorrow, June the 4th, and runs till the 29th here at the Silk Purse, and features three really distinct and talented artists. We've got Glenda Leznonapraw, Connie O'Connor, and Lisa Penz. And we're going to get to say hello to them in just a minute. But first, if you have any questions or comments for our artists, please drop those in the chat and we will get to that throughout this conversation. So let's meet our incredible artists here. Let's go alphabetically. Let's start off with Glenda. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, Stephen. Hi, everyone out there. I am a painter, but I'm also a writer. I used to teach creative writing at Douglas College for 30 years. So writing was a huge part of my life. And then I'm a traveler. I'm a good cook. And I also dance, which is sort of like a nice balance. When you're a writer or an artist, you have a very solitary life pursuit. You're in your studio doing, for me, one thing or another. And then I go out twice a week and I dance and I move. And even that informs the work that I do in both things. So that's who I am and what I do.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Glenda. Next would be Connie. Could you please tell us a bit about you?
Yeah, so creativity has been a big part of my life forever. I was encouraged to be creative when I was young. So doing everything from designing and sewing my own Barbie doll clothes to acting in the high school plays, and then was fortunate to have a creative career as well. And I taught, but I didn't teach art. I actually taught home economics. And my favorite course to teach was fashion and design. And was fortunate to have, many wonderful students who created portfolios. And the highest level students did the original designs. And then we annually had fashion shows. So 2006, I had an illness, but it gave me an opportunity to take some mindful meditation classes, which certainly play into my art. And also I took my first painting class, and it was acrylics, and we did landscapes. So that's how I started. And that was in 2007. And then was able to go back to teaching and retired and thought, well, let's see where this art might go. And it's kind of become a second career. And I entered into some different community arts type exhibitions and was very successful and grateful for the different councils for sure. And especially, of course, the West Van Council. And so I've been in a lot of different shows, which has given me the opportunity to keep learning and try different things. And so I've morphed into abstracts. And of course, then there's the whole business side of the art practice. So whether it's website work or Instagram or delivering paintings. Yeah, and creating them. So I feel very fortunate, and thank you for having us, Stephen. And really happy to be showing with Glenda and Lisa, because we have some very, different approaches to the art. So that'll be fun to talk about later.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a great conversation. Thanks, Connie. And next, Lisa, could you please tell us a bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Lisa Penz. I've been painting professionally for about 10 years. And painting art was never something I could have predicted that I would do with my life. My background is in design and branding and marketing, although I went to college for interior design. I had an entire career in visual communication, and I absolutely love the idea of how we can inform aesthetics through feeling. And so everything seemed to change for me on a trip I went onto in Egypt. I was staying in Aswan. I was staying at the Old Cataract Hotel, the place where Agatha Christie wrote Death on the Nile. It's one of the most beautiful views in Egypt. It sits on a granite bluff overlooking the Nile. And I didn't have a lot of free time when I was in Egypt. I was always like, we were always traveling, and there was really no way for me to wander off on my own. So I was sitting by the pool overlooking the Nile. It was just the most gorgeous scene you could imagine. Palm trees, there was beautiful felucca sailboats, and I just had this powerful creative feeling come over me. And I saw the concierge walk by, and I stopped him and I said, "Oh my gosh, do you have a piece of paper, an envelope, stationery, and a pen, something like I could draw on?" And he said, "Sure." And he came back and he brought me a notebook of the most beautiful cream paper with the logo embossed on it in gold. And I must have sat by the pool overlooking the Nile for an hour, and I filled every single page. And I drew what I saw. And so I had all these different pages in black pen. And so that I felt was the inciting incident into me feeling that I could make others feel this way. So I would always describe myself from there on as an abstract expressionist. I signed on with a an international hotel agent, and so most of my art career has been in luxury hotels in the U.S., where I developed my style of abstract expressionism, and it was always very bold and vivid and very highly saturated colors. And just recently, actually, I've been feeling that I've really wanted to restrain myself a little bit more, and I'm going back to those light, soft colors I saw in Egypt that day. And so now I paint in more of the modern coastal genre. And I also love the Japandi style in interior design. I love Japanese minimalism and Scandinavian coziness, and the philosophy of how you can bring the outdoors inside. And that marriage of design philosophies informs a lot of what I do with my artwork today. I envision the space it's going to live in oftentimes before I paint it. And I just would love to share the feeling of tranquility, calm, and coastal beauty with whoever I come in contact with. Thanks.
So thank you so much for sharing. That was great, everybody. So now you've met our artists and know a little bit about them. We're going to take just a quick little tour of the show, give you a little taste of what you can expect when you come in to see the exhibit here at the Silk Purse. It's pretty wonderful. We just hung it yesterday, so I'm very excited for people to see this and enjoy this incredible artwork. Excellent. So this is the show. If you come in from our street side entrance, just a really quick little overview, and we've got bios of our artists on the piano and a few other things. See the beautiful view outside that complements the beautiful artwork. Yeah, so just coming in off of our waterfront entrance, we get a great piece from Connie and one of Lisa's fantastic artworks. And now we get to get into some of Glenda's bouquet pieces. I think everyone watching will be able to figure out whose artwork is whose. You'll get used to everyone's distinct styles and techniques. Uh, it's a pretty wonderful exhibit. There's a lot of energy and different types of energy happening, as you can kind of see through here. You've got some really moments of calm and still, like in some pieces here, like Lisa has, and then some really energetic explosions from Connie, and Glenda has a really nice balance of kind of in between both. Yeah, and then the opposite wall. Yeah, now we've got another one of Glenda's wonderful collage paintings, and uh, this great little moon from Lisa. Yeah, another one of Glenda's works. And then this wall finishes off with Connie's two final paintings. So it's just a quick snapshot. Video doesn't do these artworks justice. You really have to come on in and see it in person to get the full effect of the moods and the feelings and all of the really fascinating layers in everyone's work. There's some really in meaning and in actual technique and process. It's a really interesting exhibit. Now, each of our artists have chosen one of the works that's on display to talk a little bit more in depth about maybe their inspirations, their process, that kind of a thing. So since we started with Glenda with the intros, let's start with Lisa for this portion. I'm going to pull up the painting that you selected. Excellent. Yeah, Lisa, could you please tell us about this wonderful piece?
I actually just painted this one last week. Yeah, I just had this feeling come over me because we are on the beach in Ambleside with Silk Purse, and I just wanted the idea. I feel like nature is sort of our gateway into fantasy, and I love the calm of the beach and the Pacific Northwest, and I just wanted a really beautiful, just spacious feeling. And on the monitor here, it looks like it's different tones of gray. But when everyone comes to see our work at the gallery and hopefully our opening on Thursday night, it's actually different thin veils of pearl, which I've mixed. So I use a thin veil technique so that the light changes no matter sort of from where you're standing and looking at it. It always seems to look different. And sometimes there are hydrangea plants that sneak into my work. Growing up, I had a hydrangea plant outside my bedroom window. And it was always a symbol of home for me and family and union. And every time we moved, my mom would dig a part of the roots up and she would wrap a part of the hydrangea plant in like my dad's soccer jersey. And then she would replant the hydrangea everywhere we were. So I like to think of it as there's a path of bloom that was about my childhood and adolescence, and it's just a symbol of constants in this world, as is the horizon line that you see with the ocean.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. That's a wonderful story. That's so beautiful. And mentioning, I love how you called it this veil technique, these veils of colors, because like as you said, yeah, the photo doesn't quite pick up all of the different tones that happen. It's very interesting. How did you come across this as sort of your sort of signature with this series?
That's a great question, Stephen. I think I was just I I'm a I guess a perfectionist, trying to be a reformed perfectionist. I I'm someone who really loves abstract expressionism. So I love alla prima painting, which is just paint in one layer, paint while wet on wet. But I wasn't getting the effect I wanted. And I had a picture in my mind of how I wanted this fantasy beach to look. Like if I were to, I've never seen a beach before with hydrangea bushes. Perhaps more of them exist on the East Coast, like New England or Sag Harbor. But I think I just was very stubborn with this series. I really wanted this beautiful luminous effect. So it was a lot of trial and error and a lot of probably a mistake and accidents, and then trying to recreate those mistakes and accidents. And there's a huge removal technique that is a part of my process as well. At least as much paint that's going on the canvas is coming off. I sand between layers as well in different places, and just with different textures and surfaces. And yeah, so we'll see how it goes. And I'm really excited with this new work right now. I'm calling it sort of my ultra minimalist phase as a reformed maximalist.
Oh, that's great. And the moon is kind of another reoccurring theme or symbol. Would you
Yeah,
explain that?
absolutely. When I was little, I had a really tough time sleeping. And one night there was a full moon, and my grandma held me up to a window after I said my prayers, and she said, just put all your worries, like post all your worries up into the moon. And so I did. I sort of like visualized each one of my worries I had and anxieties, and then I was able to sleep a lot better. So yeah, it just reminds me of my grandma, and just yeah, I love it as a symbol. And I also am someone who absolutely loves when day turns to night.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing. Next up, we'll go with Connie. Let me just pull up your piece here, Connie. Fantastic. Could you please tell us about this great painting?
Yeah, so this is called Mythical Love. And I really like this painting because it was one that just came together, as we like to kind of say, in the zone. So very right brain, no overthinking and redoing, etc. I mean, changes were made as we go along. As I went along. And I really like, really distinct gestural brush marks. I work around the canvas, usually flat. Even big canvases I'll have flat on the floor, propped up occasionally. So I never really know what the orientation is going to be until, I feel finished. And even then, sometimes I feel they can be hung in really any direction. The color palette started with a painting called It's a Celebration, which is one that's above the fireplace, and it has a lot of color in it. So this was kind of toned down to fewer colors, but I love working in with Payne's Gray. And one of the things that I just really like about it is you can create all these different shades of blue. And I do feel they're quite denim looking, which is interesting because, kind of the textile background. And then that bright chartreuse green, very, symbolic of spring and into early summer. You'll see a little bit of pink, and generally there is always a little bit of pink now because I actually had breast cancer in 2006, 2007. And as a kid growing up, I did not like pink. I was not a fan of pink at all. Red was my favorite color. But after I went through the cancer treatments, etc., I just decided to embrace pink. And so I keep it in the paintings, not necessarily the same shade, but just there as a reminder of what I've been through, what others have been through, and that I'm going forward. And this actually helped me get started painting. And of course, layers, Lisa mentioned that. And I mean, I can't think of an abstract artist who doesn't put layers and layers down, take them off, put them down. You kind of wonder what you're even doing with all this paint. You're just wiping it away. But in the end, it really does inform and create a depth and make the painting very interesting. The other thing that I really enjoyed after we met and discussed our theme, we talked about, it being soon the summer solstice and romance and Shakespeare. And one of the quotes that I just, after I was thinking about how to name them, looked up, and it was Helena's, "Love looks not with the eye, but with the mind, and therefore is when Cupid painted blind." So, just that whole idea is abstract in itself. Like, are we just looking with our mind? Do we look with our eyes? What layer of love can we see in the different paintings and in the emotions that come out in the paintings? So there you have it. Mythical love.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Connie. Yeah, like you mentioned, so many layers and marks and colors happening. There's a really great sense of drama in your work. You've got this these journeys from dark into light. Is that something you've sort of always worked with, or is that something kind of new to this sort of series you're working?
I'd say it's more in this series. And I also have a whole series that's very neutral, creamy whites, taupes, grays. So yeah, it's more this one where there's that kind of balance, but also imbalance between the really dark and light.
Yeah, totally. And since you work so intuitively, without a plan, um, where do you think that sort of comes from?
Yeah, I think it's everything, right? Whereas design, it's in nature, it's in architecture, it's in reading, it's in music, and it's an activity. And, Glenda mentioned to her dance and the movement. And, I love doing different sports and gardening, hiking, skiing, golfing. It all informs the painting. Somehow or another, it comes out, like I'll look at a painting and then maybe back through photos, and it's like, oh, there's the same color story. And once it was from a picture I took on the golf course, like, and it was in a painting. So, I didn't sit down to do that. But there it showed up. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks.
And then next up, Glenda, we have a great work of yours to talk about and to see. Excellent. Could you please tell us about this great piece?
All right. This is called After the Rain. And I find it actually funny listening to Lisa and Connie that none of us are doing realistic, for Midsummer romance, where you're not seeing a realistic bouquet of flowers. This is as close, I think, as you're going to get. So For me, a lot of art, although I do some figurative work and some landscape, they're all abstract expressionist in their way, and nature is a very important element in my work. So in this one, I'm trying to evoke after the rain the sort of essence of the freshness you feel in the air, and maybe the wild garden and the sensuality of it and the scents coming up from the earth. And nature, it's funny, nature influences me, and then the painting influences how I see nature. If I'm in a studio for a whole day and I go out, I see like the lines and the shapes and the colors are all kind of extra luminous and strong. And it's almost like I've come out of an art trance, but the sense of color and shape and form still continues. And the reverse also happens when I'm in the garden. I'm noting, the texture of petals or the lines of the leaves, and I bring that back in. The other thing is, you may note, I don't know if your audience can see this clearly, but I do a lot of textural work. So I counted in anticipation of this, and I probably have at least 10 different kinds of paper in there. There's a blue, and there's a green rice paper, and a sort of mauvey rice paper. There's petals from my garden. There's gold. There's a red gold. And even at the top, there's those silver dollar shapes. They all come from my garden because I love spending time there. And so the act of creation is a sensual thing. It's like my hands are getting sticky. I'm sticking things on, then I'm painting over, then I'm sticking more things on, then I'm painting into it, then I'm scraping it off. So it's a very sensual kind of creation. And this one has a kind of garden bouquet in an obvious way feeling, but sometimes the work isn't as obvious or even dark. I think romance has a dark side to it. We all know that. So in a different painting, I also used a lot of rose petals, but the background is black with some magenta and burnt sienna. And it's a much darker thing with these rose petals sort of floating. And I thought, well, what's the title of that going to be? And I thought about Ophelia, and I thought, when she was sinking into the water in despair, and maybe with tears in her eyes, and the water washing over her, maybe the last thing she saw were the petals floating on the water. So there's like a tragic romance, but I'm not afraid of the darkness and the shadow in my work. This is a very, what you're looking at, of course, is the lightness and the freshness, but I think you can look at the whole spectrum of both romance and about using things like rose petals that become not cliche and not sentimental romance, but a deeper, layered kind of thought on that subject.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Glenda.
Hmm.
Um, I would love to get to know why the sort of the collage work. Has it always been how you've made your artwork? And what is it about this tactile art making that you seem drawn to?
Well, when I think about the history of my artwork, I'll tell you, it started in kindergarten when the teacher told my mother I had to go to the Red Path Museum and study with Arthur Lismer, which was totally wasted on me because he was like a man with wild white hair, and he thought my color was great, and I was so intimidated I never went back. So that was stage one, a great failure on my part. I was just too young. And then I was more into, sort of a traditional study of art, left it for 15 years when I was marking papers and totally overwhelmed with teaching and writing my novel and other forms of writing. And when I came back, I just wanted to play. And a lot of people have commented on the aspect of play being an important ingredient in creativity. I encouraged my writing students to open up to that, but I think it's harder in writing because writing tends to be a little more cerebral, and intellectual, sometimes with spurts of creativity, and you think you're a genius, but then there's all the hard work. And whereas painting, when I went back to it, I just wanted to look around the studio, put things down, not plan anything for once in my entire life, and not have a schedule, and follow my bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say, and see where it would go. And when you work like that, as someone like Joseph Campbell would say, he's one of my heroes, it taps into the unconscious, which is, of course, a great depth of intuitive knowledge. And I think that both as a person and as an artist, this has unleashed this kind of work for me. And because I'm not just painting, I'm using textures, and I collected rice papers when I went to Japan. I came back with 3 ceramic dishes and a suitcase full of rice papers because I just fell in love with that kind of paper. And of course, you buy it from someone whose family has worked in that rice paper making for 600 years. So that I just fell in love with the tradition of it and the texture and what it can evolve into when you mix that with paint. So I guess that's a long answer to say collage came later to me, but it's worked its way as a very common technique in my work.
Oh, that's fascinating. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you all again for those great little insights into your work and into who you are as artists. Um, uh, I'm curious about it might be a great way to tie everything together, which there have been a lot of connections as we've gone through it, a lot of talking about layers, abstract expressionism, intuitive art making, emotion, feeling, nature as a bit of an inspiration. For those of you watching, when the Arts Council, when we put artists together for exhibitions like this, one of the things we do is we ask our artists to brainstorm on a title for the show as a way to sort of get to know each other and get to know each other's work. So these incredible artists came up with the title Midsummer Romance. And romance can mean a lot of things. It's a pretty big word, as we've kind of heard a little bit of tonight. I would just love to know how y'all came to this decision for this to be the title. Anyone can jump in.
Well, we were batting around different titles and we were looking at each other's work. And also, we are in June and the solstice and the sun is coming out. And there was a certain element of freedom, joyousness. At the time, we were looking at Lisa's more sailing turquoise things, and Connie had this light energy, and I have all this textural, gardeny imagery. And somehow we came to midsummer because we're coming into the summer, and romance. And I love the little quote Connie gave us. And it does, even though as I look at our work, we are very different, that there is that connection. So that's really nice.
I would just add too, if you think back, we met on one of the darkest, dreariest evenings. It was pounding with rain. And, it was nice to think about June and meet for the first time and see what similarities and differences we had. So, yeah, and I think, Glenda, you kind of got us going too. You had some strong ideas and yeah, it was positive. And I mean that in a positive way.
Yeah, you had some great ideas, Glenda. I think what was the first one? Sea light? Or it was, I'm trying to remember what it was.
Yes, there was something
title.
about light because you have light in your work, and Connie's. Yes, we played with that and somehow ended up on the other one.
And Connie, you have such a great memory to remember that stormy day and night. I didn't tell you guys this, but on the way to Glenda's, I parked and I parked a few blocks away because it was so dark. I was looking for your house. I bailed in a mud puddle on the way, and my bag went flying, and like there was mud, and I had to clean myself up. But yeah, it was to imagine how beautiful it is now outside with the weather. Like we're so happy that the weather's going to be lovely for everyone on Thursday night. Yeah, we're very fortunate.
Yes. Speaking of Thursday, for those of you watching this between now and then, please join us Thursday evening, June the 5th, from 6 till 8. The gallery will be open extended hours, and our artists will be here. We're going to have a nice little reception. There'll be a chance to meet them in person, chat with them about their artwork, and take in the show. And there's going to be a little bit of live music. It'll be a really fantastic evening. So if you're watching this between now and Thursday, please come on and see our artists and chat with them. It'll be a lot of fun. Awesome. So I think that kind of wraps up everything. Really appreciate our three artists, Glenda, Connie, and Lisa, for not only sharing their artwork in this exhibition here, but also for sharing this fantastic conversation with us this evening. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you a bit more and a bit more about your art. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Stephen.
Awesome. And yeah, for those of you watching, again, come to the reception on Thursday, June the 5th at the Silk Purse from 6 to 8. And please, if you can't make it then, please come on down and check out the exhibit. Midsummer Romance is on until June the 29th. So thank you for joining us for this conversation, and we'll chat again soon about art. Take care.